Well, most importantly, I'd love to say thank you, Jim, David, Buddy, all of you, to making time for this. The goal here today for the 1911 group was just to have a friendly discussion as we about to start this momentous 25th year of the Boulevard at SMU. And as we've all been out there all those years, struggled and had fun and watched the evolution of our school and our athletic department, there's a whole generation that can't even realize that that didn't exist at one time.
Yeah.
And I believe we're all really blessed that it does. And the three of you were key to making this wonderful opportunity, not only for the school, but for now our ACC participation exist. And so the real discussion here today is just to maybe tell a little bit of the story. If we turn the clock back 25 and a half, 26 years ago, and talk about where the Boulevard evolved from with President Turner, his evolution and experience from Ole Miss, and how we're also fortunate to have the Boulevard we have today that only continues to grow and evolve. So, Buddy, maybe if you want to lead the way and kind of walk us through the evolution of this great asset we have at SMU.
Sure. Yeah. The first thing I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the difference between the environment that we had at SMU in the year 2000 and what we have today. You think back in the year 2000, SMU for decades had not played football on campus until the death penalty. We played it in the Cotton Bowl from Doak Walker's era to the Pony Express, and then the Pony Express took us to Texas Stadium. We played at Texas Stadium for until the death penalty, and then after the death penalty, we started playing football on campus again, but it was at OMB Stadium and nobody came. I mean, if you'll recall, I think that we had a seating capacity. What was that?
I said it was at best a high school stadium.
It was. I think our seating capacity was maybe 6,000, 6,500, something like that.
Something like that. I think that's about right. We put that little end zone bleacher piece in. I might have gotten us to like 6,800.
Exactly. And so consequently, we really didn't have any traditions surrounding SMU football on campus. There was no tailgating. SMU's campus was dry. There was no alcohol allowed in the stadium or on the grounds, whether it was beer or wine or whatever. Jim and David were the co-chairs of what was the Traditions Committee, and we were tasked with the job of creating traditions surrounding SMU football and moving SMU football back on campus in a big way. Ford Stadium was, as I recall, was the first collegiate football stadium built from the ground up since the early 1960s. And so this was just kind of a new thing in college football. Jim, David, as co-chairs of that committee, would you like to add anything with regards to what the environment was back then?
Go ahead, David.
Well, we really didn't have an environment, to want the truth about it, because after the death penalty, everything went south as far as interest and everything. But surprising to me, and I don't know if it surprised Jim, when I got the call from President Turner and asking me and Jim was the co-chair of this committee, and he made it just a broad brush. I mean, we could do anything. I mean, it's like come up with any ideas you want to, and we'll consider them. And we knew at that time the new stadium was being built, so obviously that was what it was supposed to be surrounded by. So the whole tailgating thing, took a life of its own, and so we, to me, the first
and we met when Jim. We got the committee together. We had faculty, we had alumni, we had administrative people, and I've got some of the names written down here. That's not necessarily important, but we had a good broad brush of people on the committee. I thought from very different perspectives. We even had what was it, What's Colwell's name? Mike Colwell.
Right.
Colwell and Son. They were represented. So we just started from scratch, and Jim was great. Being sort of the leader of the discussion during our meetings with note cards and everything. And we met over at what now is, I guess, the Bank of Texas in that building. We met there, every other week or so for probably 18 months or something close to that anyway. And we had some come on and off. But to me, looking at the faculty that were on there, I thought Kevin Knox from the business school, I think, was a big part of the committee because he was always there. He was always giving up good ideas and just a really good guy to work with. We had Jasper Neal, who was the dean of the Dedman College at the time, and Jim Copeland, who was the AD. And we had a lady, y'all might remember, that headed up this, maybe she was in the spirit committee or cheerleaders or band or whatever. She had been at SMU a long time. I never did North Physical Education. Do y'all remember her name? But anyway, she was pretty active. She was always involved from that end point. So anyway, that was sort of the group. And obviously the first thing we had, I'll let Jim jump in here, but the first thing we had to tackle, to me, there was like three things. Looking back now at it, and look at the big picture, there were three big things that we had to solve and come up with. And that was, the location of the Boulevard. Where was it going to be? We knew we needed to have a place to tailgate. And believe it or not, we went through several, it took some time. We didn't just automatically go to Bishop Boulevard. We had somebody, I don't know who it wasn't us, on the committee, recommended that we go to the intramural field across from Moody Coliseum, where there was not a tree within, 2 miles. So we all realized that the heat would keep us from that. So we migrated, back to which made sense, the Boulevard. And, I have to say, we went through a lot of things to get there, but I think behind the scenes, I don't know this, maybe Jim does. I think President Turner, while he never came to any of our meetings per se, he kept up with what we were doing. And I think he agrees the way for us with some of these issues with City University Park and so forth, while we still had to get approvals. He made it happen. But I think, that was the big thing, was the location. And then the other big issue we had to tackle was the alcohol policy. And I'll get to that now. So maybe Jim can talk into that, but that was a whole saga of its own. But what I will say, what helped that get through, and I know this, I've talked to enough people, was by putting the Boulevard where we did, on Bishop Boulevard, the Binkley, the street that runs all the way through to the museum, was a big issue because that way it gave us a demarcation between where they wanted the students to be. They wanted the students to be separate from the alumni. There was this view at the time. We don't want the students and the alumni to really mix. We may make them all drunks or something. I guess I don't know, but they wanted them to be separate. So the Boulevard, Binkley was perfect. So we could say, okay, everybody north on Binkley, there will be students, and all the alumni will be south. And we sort of started with that precipice, and they like that. So I know the Alcohol and Beverage Commission, I talked to one of those guys, and he said that was a very important issue. If it was just been one big field, as time's gone on, I don't think if we were to do that today, it wouldn't be as big an issue, but back then it would have been. So, that was, to me, another big thing. And another thing people might think about is we knew that to get people to come to games or come to the Boulevard, okay, because we weren't very good in football, we needed to have a way to have television coverage on the Boulevard so people could come and see other games. So, if you have a Texas graduate and Texas is playing, well, I'm not going to go, I can watch on TV. Well, I went so far as I talked to the cable company, Charter Cable, I guess who it was, initially, because this was before the era of dish satellites. And we didn't have to. We were going to actually run some cable and put
I'll
in
pick up while we're waiting for him
tie-ins
to get back
to cable
on.
television in the various places
I'll
along the boulevard.
I'll have to say that 25 years ago is a long time ago, and I'm just impressed as heck as David can remember all that stuff. You give him a lot of credit. I don't, but I do have some memories that might be interesting and helpful. To start with, I didn't get the call from President Turner. I got the call from Jim Copeland, who was the athletic director at the time, and said, "Would you co-chair this committee with David?" And my recollection is that, quite frankly, although this discussion's about the Boulevard, it was the committee was the New Traditions Committee. New Traditions Committee. It was not limited to tailgating or Boulevard. It had a broad range. The horse, Peruna, the songs, the cheerleaders, the band, on and on and on. The colors. It had unlimited. The committee had unlimited framework about how this is our opportunity to change whatever traditions we had or didn't have, and we want to have. So, but having said that, it didn't take long for it to kind of narrow into tailgating and how we're going to do the Boulevard, because that was really the most important critical point of new traditions and involvement the most people. Um, I felt, unlike David a little bit, perhaps, I felt that President Turner was appropriately staying arm's length away from what we were doing. Didn't want to get involved, didn't want to have an input to it, but of course he did, and he was a great supporter and advocate and cheerleader for Bishop Boulevard being a central point of where the tailgating was, because he came from Mississippi in the Grove and had all those background of what a great opportunity that would be. How we were going to do it, all the things David talked about, how we were going to do it, what it was going to be like, how you managed it, how you controlled it, became a real issue. And our after we got through the quick issues that we're not going to change Peruna, and we're not going to change going around the mountain until she comes, the Mustang fight songs, and we're not going to change it. We're not going to change our colors. We got through those pretty quick. And the rest of that time, that 18 months that David talked about, was really spent on how do we develop a comprehensive, really impactful tailgating environment. And it got very complicated. And it started out, as David mentioned, started out with the alcohol, where it was going to be to start with, and the alcohol, where you could serve alcohol. And that got very controversial. The university had a clear no alcohol policy, and of course the relationship with the church and all those things became very, very complicated, and ultimately had to be resolved at President Turner's level. And when we finally got there and came back, there were 2 or 3 reiterations of what that looked like. TABC was involved and going to be on campus, and had to separate them, as David said, the students from the older folks, and that wasn't going to work. And it took a long time and a lot of effort and some greasing the skids, David, to get that done. Um, Having said that, we considered the location. It wasn't automatically going to be on Bishop Boulevard. It was going to be at the parking lot. The I forget what the Grove is called, between Highland Park Methodist Church and the theology school, where all those trees are. It was going to be there. That was a. And we were concerned that if you had the big parking lot, or if you had Bishop Boulevard, you wouldn't have enough people show up. pretty pretty skinny tailgating. So maybe a smaller space to start with, and it might be more interesting and more advantageous. But as we grew, we had, where were people going to park? Where were people going to park? And we still have the same problem today. Thank goodness today we didn't back then. But where were people going to park? And how we had plans about how we were going to bus people and trolley people in from the middle school and the churches and across Central Expressway, how we're going to trolley them in and back. Um, Thank goodness we didn't have to do that at the beginning, and we may interesting enough, in entering to the ACC, that was one of the big issues that had to be addressed because we're going to start. We anticipated start having bigger crowds, and how are people going to get there, and where are they going to park? And you got the parking in University Park, Island Park, got problems there. So that's a problem they're still working on even today about how they're going to get people into the stadium and into the boulevard. But but the whole issue really resolved around, from our viewpoint, I believe, resolved around alcohol, and it took us a long time to really get to where that worked and would work. President Turner did. I don't know how he did it. I don't know who he did it, but he kind of worked through that with the church and with the board, and allowed us to serve alcohol. And then over time, how you'd have TV, how you have electricity so you can look at other games, whether you had bands or not, music, live music, did that create an atmosphere or not? Those were all issues that our committee had to work on and work through, and came up with it with, I think, a pretty good package. It was kind of Baby Grove, the Boulevard, Baby Grove, and it's sustained itself and endured and enhanced and grown to what it is today. And thank goodness we have an athletic program and football program that deserves it and feeds off of it. Well, one of the problems that we had then and we still have today is how do you get them off of the boulevard into the stadium, right? How do you get them off the boulevard into the stadium? Still having to deal with that problem.
But it's
But
getting better. It's getting better.
they're working on it. They got plans, getting better. I anticipate it'll get more better. You start playing teams like Baylor and TC and Baylor and LSU, and people get in the stadium. They'll come to the football game.
Buddy, you were going to say something.
Yes. So I was kind of a latecomer to the committee. Jim and David did a fabulous job, I think, of getting it started and kick-started, and they picked the members of the committee extremely well. Like David said, they had great representation from all aspects of the campus. I came on the committee in the spring of 2000, invited to join the committee by my friend Craig Ennis, because he knew that our older son was a third-year student at Ole Miss, and Lynn and I had been to the Grove a number of times while Sloan, our older son, had been a student at Ole Miss, and there was still some debate with regards to where the boulevard was going to be. And so when I came on the committee, my understanding was that the problem that we faced was, in order to get the building permit to break ground on Ford Stadium, we had to prove to the towns of University Park and Highland Park three things. One, there would be no light pollution after 9 or 10 o'clock at night. There would be no noise pollution after 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And the third was a huge problem, and that was that there would be no surface parking in the towns of University Park and Highland Park, and we had to prove to the towns, how we were going to alleviate those problems. Well, this was before SMU had any television interest at all, and so the first two were relatively easy to cure. My memory is that all the home games were going to be played at 6 o'clock in the evening, so that they'd be over before there was light pollution and noise pollution. And if you'll recall, Ford Stadium, when it was first built, only had 4 light stanchions at the corners of the stadium, and as the sun went down, it got to be where I'm not so sure that we could be running the pass offense that we run today. uh, but the 6 o'clock game was great. All the students knew when it was going to be. Everybody who wanted to tailgate knew, when it was going to be, and so on and so forth. The big problem was the parking issue, and I wish I could remember the lady's name, but she was the head of the transportation committee. That was, and she had representation on the traditions committee, and her plan was that SMU would contract with all of the commercial parking garages on the east side of Central. Mockingbird Station, what is now the Merrill Lynch building, and so on and so forth, which we did. And they had a shuttle that ran constantly during game time, and 2 hours before the game, to pick people up at the parking lot. And the plan was, her plan, the transportation committee's plan, was to shuttle people in the big entrance to Ford Stadium was going to be Duck Walker Plaza.
Right.
The shuttles would circle in the circle, drop people off. If they wanted to tailgate, they were going to send the shuttles to the intramural fields behind Moody Parking Garage. That's where the tailgating, that's where the transportation committee planned for tailgating to be. It was, and having been, just brought in on the committee, I was horrified at the idea. I raised my hand and said, "Excuse me, that's the wrong place for the Boulevard." I mean, I'm sorry, for tailgating. We didn't call it the Boulevard. We didn't know to call it the Boulevard because we didn't know where it was going to be. And so she said, "What's the problem?" And I said, "Well, you think about it. The intramural fields on the, behind Moody Parking Garage,
107. 107 degrees.
During the early fall, will be hotter than blazes." And she said, "Oh, it's no problem. We're going to set up tents." And I said, "Well, tents intensify the heat. They don't." I said, somebody. The very first game, if we did tailgating on the intramural fields behind Moody Parking Garage with tents, somebody will die, and nobody will come back the next week. Yeah, and if you'll recall, the people on the committee, we were terrified of that. I mean, we were terrified that you spend, millions of dollars on this new stadium, and you do all this stuff, and you create the atmosphere that you want. People show up the first game, September the 2nd, 2000, and they have a bad experience, and they're not going to come back. That was very frightening. And so she said, "Well, where would you have it?" I said, "Well, we have the perfect place. It's called Bishop Boulevard. It has trees." And and she said, "Oh, that's the wrong side of the state." Their vision was the grand entrance was going to be Duck Walker Plaza, and that just didn't fit in what they thought it should be like. And so anyway, we went back and forth, and my recollection is that Jim and David had an appointment with President Turner and explained to him what the issues were. And my understanding is that he said in that meeting, "Oh gosh, the Boulevard, that Bishop Boulevard is the right place for the, for tailgating." And I think that it's turned out to be the perfect place for tailgating.
No, there's no doubt. I mean, it's been an amazing evolution, gentlemen. It was even more exciting for my generation. We were 9 years out of SMU, had lived through the death penalty. We're suffering through that evolution of what we were athletically. Now we were finally going to have a stadium on campus. We were going to have this opportunity to have a gathering spot on campus. A lot of us had grown up going to games at other colleges. The Grove was in our mind. At the same time, I think, what was so funny about my crowd that September 2nd is none of us really knew what or how it was going to work, right? We'd signed up, we're all in, but like, what's going to happen? And so, as you all have witnessed, we had built this giant, barbecue smoker on this trailer about a year or two after we got out of college, because we thought that was a good excuse to get together and have parties. And actually, we thought we could cook pretty well. And then we all got married. So then the band had kind of dispersed. And so the Boulevard, the emergence of that gave us an opportunity to regather as friends and groups and rebuild and maintain that brotherhood, that sisterhood, that allegiance. And so I'll never forget, we rolled in there and had kind of no clue what we could or could not do. And you all will laugh. That very first game, we drove my truck over the curb and into the grass because we thought it was where they wanted us, on the grass with the smoker on the grass Friday night, and spent the night on the Boulevard because we fired up the smoker to cook, briskets and everything all night long. And the funny part is, nobody said anything to us. They were just happy somebody was there. And it's been, now a generation later. 25 years is a quick turn generation. I've got 3 children in their 20s now, all who have now graduated college, none of which I could get to go to school in their hometown. One of which has now got an MBA, so I got a partial pony on him. But one went to Ole Miss, and that's my middle son. And I was really excited to call him after his first home game at the Grove. And I said, "So, Will, what do you think?" He said, "Dad, the Grove is amazing." He goes, "But the Boulevard's better."
Wow, that's terrific.
I said, "Well, tell me about that." He said, "Well, look, Dad, the Grove's tight, it's history, and it's awesome. But, we can pull into the Boulevard. We can drive our stuff up there. You've got the shade, the trees, people flow up and down." And I'll admit, I'm probably a poor father. All 3 of my kids grew up on the Boulevard, bad, worse, or indifferent. And so they are still the biggest fans, diehard ponies, even though none of them got their undergrads there. And now that they're all back here living and working, I can say they have not missed a home game since they got out of their own college. And what we've gathered all these years later, you gentlemen deserve great credit and foresight to see how that community could be built. And I would be intrigued to know if that was part of the discussion. Was part of some of the insight and maybe, in the back channel from Turner's, from his experience at Ole Miss, that this was more than just tailgate gathering, but how do we continue to strengthen this community? Because we didn't have a whole lot to celebrate on the field at that time, but we all wanted to be together.
I think that's one of the great things about the 1911 group, is the fact that the people who started the 1911 group, Mitch Brown, is doing a fabulous job of trying to pull alumni together, particularly young alumni. And I think that it's an extension, Bill, of exactly what you're talking about. By the way, I want to go back and credit the lady that was the head of the transportation committee. As it turns out, I don't know if y'all recall, but September the 2nd, 2000, the ambient temperature was reported to be 109 degrees. The field temperature was 130 degrees, literally on the field at Ford Stadium, which means that the intramural field would have been, 120 or so degrees, in the baking sun. So we had our spot, the same spot that we've had since September the 2nd, 2000, under the oak, tree on the slot number 86 on the west side of the center of the boulevard. Back then, right across from the natatorium.
Okay.
And to her credit, the chair of the transportation committee, and I wish I could remember the lady's name, came over to our slot on the boulevard and said, "Buddy, you're right. This is the right place. This is the right place."
Yeah, I passed Jim Copeland that day before the game, and it was so hot. And he passed me. He said, "Thank God we didn't have it on the intramural field." That was his comment. So everybody realized immediately. I had a daughter-in-law. My son lived in Minnesota, SMU graduate, lived in Minnesota, and married a girl from up there, and he works up there. And he brought her down. It was the first time she'd come to Dallas. She'd never been south of Minneapolis. And she went to that game. And I don't think she's been back to Dallas, but maybe twice since then.
David, I don't know about your recollection, but Bill, I think you give our traditions committee a lot more credit than we deserve. I don't think we were into the philosophical bringing people together. We were just trying to figure out where to have the damn tailgating party. It was hard, and it was complicated, and it was controversial, and we were just trying to solve that problem. It's wonderful. It's turned out to be what it is, and all its contributions to the university as a whole, and athletic department and athletic program. But I don't remember us getting very, very philosophical about it.
So one thing I'd like to bring up, just so that you know how far we would come. We thought we had the alcohol thing worked out. Well, then I got this call that they approved it, but you're going to have to put fences up on Binkley, across Binkley, both sides. And so for any of the students to come into the adult section on the south, they're going to have to get a wristband,
Right,
that says they're 21, and then they have to stay up. And we said, this is not a prison. I mean, anyway, we pushed back on that, and I don't know all, the people that in that decision, but we finally got that solved. But that just scared the heck out of me, thinking about all my friends telling them, we're going to put a screen up there, that my sons were both at SMU then, and they couldn't even come down to our tailgate.
So it's interesting. My older son was third year at Ole Miss when I came on the traditions committee 25 years ago. Now his oldest son just completed his sophomore year at Ole Miss, which means that Linda and I have gone back to the Boulevard, to the Boulevard, to the Grove, a few times since he's been there, and I will tell you, the Boulevard is better. My son, my grandson, they laugh at the Boulevard. It's cute, it's nice, but the fact is, the Grove, it's shoulder to shoulder. There is no room to move around in the Grove.
Yeah.
The way the Boulevard, and actually, my vision for the future is that as members of the ACC, the Boulevard will expand. There'll be more and more people, but we have room to expand. The Grove doesn't. No. So honestly, I think that the Boulevard is far better than the Grove. We have room. We have room to expand. We have room to do some really cool things. I think. Have bands on a regular basis at different spots and so on and so forth. But our campus is far more conducive to that. And you go to tailgating at TCU, Baylor, they have what our committee was able to avoid. And that is tailgating in the open sun in a parking lot that just makes the experience miserable compared to what we can experience here in Dallas. There are a lot of folks that will say that our Boulevard, regardless of whether they go to the game or not, is the best party in Dallas.
No doubt about it. I mean, I'm sure you gentlemen like me were probably up at the Oklahoma game 2 seasons ago, and you know, standing in front of this world class Oklahoma stadium and all their history and all their success, but their entire tailgating function is in a flat parking lot. And it was about 103 degrees that day, David. So I,
I understand.
I thought I was in Oklahoma hell.
I know.
But I'll give them credit. They couldn't have been more welcoming as fans, and just the brotherhood, sisterhood of what used to be the Big 12 was still alive. I you know I have so many memories over 25 years, and the evolution. Some days that it might have been Buddy, me, and about 4 other people on the Boulevard, and now the world wants to come out to see the comments we received from the ACC networks visiting last year, how much they enjoyed it, to see how hard it is to, just manage making sure everybody has fun for the crowds that are now showing up. It's still a work in progress, and it's fantastic to have that issue, to have a winning program. I also do think that maybe the highlight of my 25-year involvement happened last fall. That whole season, I never thought I'd have before I passed from the earth. So it was a pretty good year all the way around. But at the Pittsburgh game, and I think one of the things that's been great about what you all enabled to come together is the people that come to our campus for those games from out of town, people that have not been in Dallas before, our competitors, player families, et cetera. And this couple came up. I'm normally there early because I'm still bringing that same 30-year-old pit out there. And they came up and they're like, can we ask a question? How does this work? We're from Pittsburgh. Our son's on the team. We're just here for the game. Like, what do we do? And we're like, welcome to the Boulevard. Like, look, we all have spots and we've got groups and we've got members, but we welcome you. Please come join us, get a drink, have some fun. And they're like, are you serious? We're like, yeah, absolutely. And so they came over and, got a drink from our bar and we're meeting people. And then they walked through campus and they came back, and that went on over probably a 4-hour period before the game started. We shut down 30 minutes before kickoff. Everybody's going to the game. This couple came up and found me and they said, Mr. Rowe, we can tell you that we've been to every school in the ACC. We grew up in Pittsburgh and we grew up going to Pittsburgh games. There is nothing like this we've ever seen in the ACC. Here's my business card. Please call me when we play in Pitt. We will entertain you. It will be absolutely horrible compared to what you've experienced here. It will be in a parking lot. It'll probably be cold. The beer will be warm. He goes, but we'd love to pay you back. But this is the most special place we've ever found before a football game. And it's not just the setting, it's the welcomeness of the people on this boulevard. And I think that's a testimony to what SMU has developed as a community. It's what we all have been so fortunate to participate in, and what the momentum that's here today and just getting bigger will continue to propel us forward.
Yeah, I think that the work that Jim Johnston and David Hudnall and their traditionalist committee did 25 years ago, in a small way, has lent toward the success that SMU is having today in football. I think that certainly the experience that visiting teams and the fans from the visiting teams have in Dallas, coming to the Boulevard, coming to our game, is I think adds to the perception of SMU's success, and I believe that it in a very small way makes it a little easier for our head football coach Rhett Lashley to recruit, and for for our team to win.
Well said.
I think we really need to add that we had a great committee, Buddy, and all those other people, and no one was bashful on that committee. There were a lot of comments, a lot of ideas, a lot of the conversation, a lot of confrontation. But I think Jim Copeland, our athletic director at the time, he wasn't a Mustang, hadn't been here long. He didn't know about the traditions, and he really didn't have a very strong vision of where we were going at that time. We were just trying to get day to day. But he let us work. He let our committee work. Let us vet it all out and come up with a conclusion. And then he'd take it to Dr. Turner and whoever else needed, the lawyers and whoever. And he supported us really strongly. And he gets a lot of credit for not driving it, but letting it flow and letting it get done right. Well, and the day we have game day, Saturday morning game day on the Boulevard, will be kind of a wonderful day, won't it?
It will, sir. I think we have potential, maybe even coming up this season with some of the matchups we have and the potential we have in this program, maybe fostered by nothing better than our great coach. And I have a vision in my head of that game day set up in front of Dallas Hall, that Boulevard full, and making sure that I'm there extra early to have more meat than ever on that barbecue pit, making sure everybody can have fun. It's been an amazing evolution to see how the different groups have joined the Boulevard, the different generations, the people that come because, as Buddy said, it's the best party in Texas, best party in Dallas on a Saturday. And they may not be ponies, right? But they know there's a matchup. They know there's something fun going on. I think one of the greatest recent evolutions was really, the push we've made in the last couple of seasons as our competitiveness has come up, as the ACC evolution occurred, that these historic members that we all represent of Boulevard spot owners have really been committed to saying, hey, look, we can make it the best party in the world, but 30 minutes before kickoff, we're going to that stadium. This is over. And 15 years ago, none of us really were like that. We wanted to put people onto campus. We wanted to, hopefully that some of them would go in the stadium, but now the whole community's pushing hard on that. And it's really working well. And as Buddy said, we've got room for it to grow and evolve. We've taken that show on the road since, like Buddy, my son went to Ole Miss, and I'll admit he had the best 5 years of his life there. So I took the show on the road and got a spot down from the Grove right in front of Vaught Hemingway Stadium and showed him how to have a better spot in the Grove environment. And so we've gotten a little bit of an SMU reputation over there. And we're going again this year on a weekend that we don't have a game. So I'm not missing a Mustang game.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for all having time today. As Buddy pointed out, what Mitch Brown has done with the 1911 group, what this group continues to strive for, is getting our community further networked as much as anything, keeping the next generation getting more involved with the business community, our overall culture and community here in Dallas, and promoting what it is to be a Mustang. It's an exciting week. We've just graduated another class. I can't believe it's 2025. You would laugh, Buddy, me and my little crew. I think we had a meeting the first week of March to talk about fall of 25 Boulevard planning. And I don't think I've ever met that early to look at schedule, planning, music, who else is in the group, who else wants in. So that momentum is really here. And I think the other thing I love is it's all generations. It's young to old, and we all want to welcome everybody. The biggest winner of our ACC move beyond us is the Dallas sports fan. We've got Baylor, Stanford, Syracuse, Miami coming to this town this year. Those are great matchups. And, I didn't have us winning all those games we won last year. So I was going to be happy no matter where we came out. I'm hoping we have another great season. And I got a lot of confidence in our new AD. We're so blessed with David Miller's efforts on the board and everything that this generation has done, because it was a huge evolution post the death penalty. And boy, it's been constant work, both blood, sweat, and equity. And you all are three pillars of that. that has built something and enabled that group to get this passed, to get this organized, that hopefully will be here forever.
Indeed.
Well, I hope you all come out and see me on the Boulevard. The barbecue is always on. And I know we'll all be cheering hard. And thank you for your time today. And I'm sure Mitch will reach back out. They'll edit this so we all look more composed and this flows through. And it'll be posted on the 1911 site. They'll put it out on LinkedIn.
That's what I hope for.
And I can't thank you all enough for spending time with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you to our incredible sponsors, Security National Bank, Hilltop Property Tax, Mignon Steakhouse, Sound of a Rose Podcast, and the SMU Cox School of Business for making this all possible.